Hi, my name's Thomas Threlkeld. I'm a QIC-EY Program Coordinator. Today, we're going from going through the motions to making moments matter.
Welcome back to Elevating Engagement, a podcast from the Quality Improvement Center on Engaging Youth and Finding Permanency, or QIC-EY. I'm Kyle Ferreira, and as always, I'm joined by April Dinwoodie. In our last episode, we sat down with Kimber Holler from Montana to talk about moving from passion to proficiency.
That's right, Kyle. And what Kimber did for us was she got this great concept on the table called relational time management. And that's really saying this. We don't always have the luxury of more time, but we can use the time we have with more intention when engaging children and youth.
Exactly. And today we're taking that a step further. We're looking at the impact of that proficiency on a granular level in the day in and day out, even when you're staring at a packed calendar.
Yeah, the one thing we hear consistently, Kyle, from professionals is that I want to engage, but I only have 15 minutes before court, or I have 4 home visits today. How am I going to make that happen and get to everyone? It easily falls into going through the motions and checking the boxes to the next appointment.
Yeah, and today's key message is the antidote to that, making moments matter. It's the belief that you can create a massive impact even in just a few intentional moments.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's shifting the focus from the clock to making connections with children and youth. And to help get us there with this concept is one of our favorites from QIC-EY, Thomas Threlkeld. Welcome to the podcast, Thomas.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, Thomas, welcome. We're diving into making moments matter. In your experience working across the sites, why is it so hard for professionals to stop going through the motions?
Well, as a professional, I definitely think sometimes it's easy to slip into this place of I've got to get A, B, and C done. I've got to make sure this happens and this happens. And so sometimes in putting on that social work hat, we take off that human hat and we forget that we're a person and that person that we're working with is a person. And so when we start engaging them in authentic and meaningful ways, when we stop going through those motions and really focus on that relationship and that engagement as a foundation, we really change the dynamic moving forward. So as we think about switching that dynamic between child welfare professionals and children in care, we really have to focus on understanding that engagement isn't an extra task, right? It isn't something that you do after the fact. It's actually a huge part of the work. And once you're authentically engaging, you're really creating a space that allows for some real authentic and engaging work to be done.
Thomas, you often talk about this specific skill that we have with QIC-EY and all the training that we do. It's called pausing with purpose. What does that actually look like when a worker is walking into a high-stress visit?
Pausing with purpose is about taking that moment that you're stepping into that environment and saying, I want to be intentional about how I use this time, understanding the value of that time and the impact that this time dedicated to that relationship building, that engagement piece can have when you're out there doing your casework or when you're out there as a child welfare professional. No, carving out those 5 minutes to have some real connecting moments really creates such a strong foundation to really do some of that work in the field.
Yeah, that's so pivotal. And another pillar of this message is creating meaningful interactions. How do we show care when we are restricted by time or a specific agenda?
We can find ways to learn more about the children that we're working with. I always say it's called reaching in, right? Because a child or youth isn't always going to be fully upfront with what their interests and what they want you to know and everything. So it's really about being curious, being open, being accepting, creating that safe space so that they feel safe enough to really share some of those pieces of themselves with you. Because believe it or not, some of that requires some vulnerability in the fact that they may be potentially connecting to somebody that could hurt them, abandon them, or treat them in some way how maybe some other adults have treated them throughout their experience. And so as we think about getting to know a child or youth or really creating those meaningful interactions, it doesn't always have to be huge, right? It can be 5 minutes of playing catch. It could be playing video games for a few minutes, but really just getting on their level and being able to interact as a human being connecting with another human being.
Mm. And Thomas, what is amazing is that we know because in our QIC-EY Now product that is on the website and that professionals can use for these little clips and tips to really help them brush up on their skills and learn about new skills. But you have one that is really centered on this topic, and it's all about making moments matter. It's very personal to you. Would you mind sharing a little bit of a personal experience with a moment that mattered for you when you were younger?
Definitely. So when I was a youth, I was in the child welfare system. I have lived experience, or AKA, I'm a lived expert. But in thinking about my time in care, I had some real challenges with connecting with adults because I had experienced so much trauma and loss and so many difficulties. And so, in feeling so disconnected, I went through some really painful experiences throughout my time in child welfare. And I always didn't feel like adults cared for me, right? And so what did I do? Anytime an adult would approach me, I'd push him away. I'd say, "This is scary. You're not safe." All these things would be happening in my head. And so what does that look like? Well, lashing out, being disrespectful, just being a child who's experienced a lot of pain and then projecting that outward. And so, I met this guy when I was at a group home. I was a teenager, and he really created a moment for me that was really life changing. And it all started with cinnamon sticks. And so this guy, he shows up to the house. I was working with him. I had a pretty good relationship. I remember the first time meeting him. He told some funny jokes, and I was like, this guy just thinks he's a jokester, But he always had a smile on his face, and he brought that energy to the room. He brought that energy to me and my interactions with him. And I was like, yeah, this guy's all right, But I was still struggling with a lot of behaviors and things. And so one Saturday, he came and got me. He wasn't even working, and he said, "Let's go get some cinnamon sticks." And I was like, what does that even mean? He's like, "We're going to Burger King. We're going to get the cinnamon sticks." And so, he took me, and I sat there and ate cinnamon sticks. And of course, in my head, I was thinking, he just brought me here because he wanted cinnamon sticks. What is this about? I couldn't fathom that somebody actually wanted to get to know me or wanted that opportunity for me to open up, for me to feel human again. It was so caught me off my guard. And so in that interaction, asking me about what I want for my future, who I am, what I've done, it was so refreshing to talk to an adult who wasn't obsessed with all the behaviors and everything else that I was doing, that really seemed to care about me as a person. And so that was such an impactful experience. And from there, there were so many other cinnamon stick moments where he showed me, through taking me out for food, through doing those activities, through playing basketball, all of those different things that, an adult can really do to show a kid that they matter, that they have value. And all of those things that he actively did, it really helped me put my walls down for the first time in a long time. And in putting my walls down, I started to really recognize the value of relationships and the role that relationships play in our lives as we grow throughout our teen years and our adulthood. Feeling that level of vulnerability and being able to connect has such a huge impact. And when we think about that, when we think about making moments matter, these children and youth, they're not going to remember the point cards and the systems and the reward systems and all of that stuff. They're going to remember the people that took that time, that took those moments to show them that they mattered. And that's what making moments matter is all about.
Yep, they're going to remember those cinnamon sticks, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas, for sharing that powerful story about your caseworker. It's a great reminder that trust is built in those small intentional gaps between those tasks. Before we let you go, what's one resource you'd recommend for professionals you want to make moments matter right now?
As I think about all of the different things our program or our project has to offer, I really gravitate toward the QIC-EY Now video clips. Those are really short form. They kind of match what, learning is all about for the shorter attention spans that we've all kind of developed in this world. But, it's lived experts, it's professionals sharing some wisdom, and us providing some basic tips. And so through the QIC-EY Now website, you are able to really just learn some pointers that you can pick up and run with, right? Creating that foundation, having you think about maybe some things you haven't thought about, and going from there.
Thank you so much, Thomas. And these clips and tips, QIC-EY Now, are on QICEY.org. And we thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
April, I'm still thinking about that shift from clock to connection. It really ties back to what Kimber said in the last episode about relational time management.
Yep, it does. And there's always a moment that can be your moment as a professional to be sitting in the car and waiting outside of an appointment room, a moment that you don't need to have it scripted, you don't need to have it perfect, but it's an opportunity to sit and to create that moment in time that would make all the difference in the world.
So if you're listening to this, as you head into your next visit or your next meeting this week, ask yourself, how can I make this moment matter?
That's right. And you can join us for the next episode of Elevating Engagement, when we'll be exploring the importance of engaging children and youth early and often, rather than waiting for that ideal time. This podcast is supported by the Administration for Children and Families of the United States Department of Health and Human Services as part of a financial assistance award totaling $5 million, with 100% funding by ACF and HHS. The contents are those of the author or authors and do not necessarily represent the official views of, nor an endorsement by ACF or HHS or the United States government. For more information, please visit the ACF website.